Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we explore the paranormal sightings at camping sites, where hikers are still wandering the grounds looking for a ride home. Then we are off to investigate the haunting campgrounds of Larch Hill. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Now let's get started. This happened 2 weeks ago. I went on a camping trip with my family in California at this campsite called Ice House. I've always been a solo camper, but my siblings and cousins are all in a relationship, so I have my tent to myself. On my third day of camping, it was around 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., and everyone is dead asleep. I was just on my phone watching TikTok. When I started hearing footsteps around my tent, I thought it was one of my family members. I said, "Who is it?" Then the footsteps stopped. It sounded like literal footsteps. I unzipped my tent window to look at the direction the steps were coming from, but no one was there. Personally, I'm not a huge believer of the paranormal or ghosts. I shrugged it off and thought it was an animal. The next night, everyone was partying and drinking. I went to the forest to go use the restroom. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw someone standing behind me. I quickly turned around. There was a man standing by the tree. I'd say he was about 10 feet away from me. He looked like a hiker with a huge backpack. It was late at night, so I ran. I didn't even think about looking back. I went straight to my dad and told him, so we all as a group went to look for this man. We couldn't find him. My dad called the ranger the next morning to report the incident. The ranger's exact words were, "We have had a lot of paranormal activities in this exact area." Chills went down my spine. Literally, he begins to tell us a story of a man that's seen wandering the campsite with a backpack. The rangers have tried looking for him, but have never found any trace of him. He said he doesn't know if anyone has passed away here or not yet. We all packed up, left to an area where there were people at, so we'd feel safer. I just think about if that was an actual person, or was it a ghost? Overall, this made me a 100% believer. Seeing a face of a ghost is scary because they don't blink. I don't know why, but after this encounter, I can't even sleep without thinking about my encounter. I guess I'm still spooked about it. About 10 years ago, I was camping at the Ice House with my boyfriend and another couple. We had a great day hiking and rock hounding as there wasn't a ton of people. I went to our tent around midnight. At about 2 a.m., something hit our tent. Sounded like someone threw a small stone. Boom. I thought, it's probably a pine cone or small branch falling. Then it happened again. 3 booms about 2 seconds apart each. So then I thought, it must be our buddies trying to scare us. I woke up my boyfriend and made him listen with me. We could hear a static noise like you hear when you are trying to tune in a radio station on an old AM/FM radio. Then we heard 2 men arguing. It was gibberish. Couldn't understand one word, just that they were very angry. I yelled, "Shut the up!" Well, that was the wrong thing to do. Boom, boom. At least a dozen times, but harder than before. My boyfriend jumped out of the tent, trying to see what the hell was going on. Once he exited the tent, it all stopped. Complete silence. Noon was out there, so we ran over to our friend's tent about 20 feet away. Bust in there, but they were sound asleep in their sleeping bag. It couldn't have been them. We stayed in their tent until the sun came up. We got up to look around our tent. The night before, we had raked out the ground, so we didn't sleep on any rocks or branches. There was nothing around our tent, no rocks or anything that could explain what was hitting our tent. I was so scared and uncomfortable that we backed up and left. Beautiful place, but haunting. This is the only time I had a threatening face-to-face contact, experience, or encounter. In June of 2019, my friend, me, and our girlfriends decided to go camping. It's the day of our trip. We were packing our stuff in the car. We finally get everything loaded in the car and put the address in the GPS. We set off on the trip. After 3 hours of driving, along with 45 minutes of hearing my friend and his girl argue, we finally arrive. We get out of the car and start unloading the bags. As I was getting the last of the stuff, my friend was asking his girlfriend why she needed 3 bags for a one-night camping trip. She smiled, then opened one of them. It had some pre-rolls, along with other goodies. The other 2 bags had her favorite snacks and clothes. Now, knowing we had some MJ, we had to find a place to camp that wasn't near other people. It took until sundown, but we found a perfect spot. We decided that after we got everything taken care of, we would eat hot dogs and smoke a blunt. I started to build a campfire to light the area so we could set up our tents, but ran out of wood in the immediate area. I said I would go get some, while my friend stayed with the girls. I set off on my journey. After about 2 minutes, I find some wood to use. I start picking up sticks, when all of a sudden I felt someone grab my wrist. I looked up to see a man with a blank expression with a hoodie. For a man, he had surprisingly long fingernails. He was digging them in my wrist while trying to grab my other wrist. I turned my head to try to break away and screamed for help. My friends shouted a response, saying they were coming. After they shouted, I immediately felt him let go of my wrist. I turned towards him, but he wasn't there anymore. I ran as fast as I could, terrified of the whole experience. I met my friends halfway and said we had to leave immediately. I didn't even explain myself. I just wanted to go. We load our stuff up, then took the long walk back. Once back at the car, I explained what happened to me. It scared them enough to make them want to hustle. I had a picture of my wrist immediately after, but my iPhone broke and my iCloud wasn't backed up, so I lost the picture. It has now become a scar, which shows just how much force he put on it. It was the most terrifying thing to ever happen to me. I'm still not sure if I'm a believer, but I do admit I love some true horror, and I wanted to share the one encounter I truly cannot explain. I was a scout with Scouting Ireland from age 12-16. One of our most frequently used campsites was Larch Hill in the Wicklow Mountains. The scout leaders liked to tell us scary stories about a woman who haunted the area, most commonly referred to as the Lady of Larch Hill. I wasn't exactly a believer at the time and brushed off the stories as just that. I'm going to briefly describe the layout of the campsite. When you drive into the entrance of the campsite, there's a big gravel car park with the welcome center and bathrooms to your right. Straight ahead, there's a gravel path that has entrances to the fields on the left or right of it. On this particular occasion, we were camping at the very back field, to the right of the path. There was no lighting installed anywhere on the campsite, apart from the bathrooms and the welcome center, which only lit up the car park. So, this particular weekend, I must have been 15 years old at the time, we're camping in the back field. The mess tent is set up near the entrance to the field, which leads out onto the path that goes towards the car park. It faces out towards the mountains. To the left of the mess tent, at the base of the field, surrounded on one side by trees and brush, were our tents. At the time, there were 4 girls camping, 2 two-man tents, and a few boys' tents scattered around us. My best friend and I were sharing a tent. We had gotten into a pointless argument that evening, but I was scared of walking around the campsite on my own in the dark. So that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I asked her to come to the bathrooms, which were a 5-minute walk from the campsite, with me. She wasn't talking to me, and walked about 6 feet in front of me. I sheepishly followed behind. We walked without torches towards the mess tent, as it had a single light hanging from the rail outside of it, lighting the campsite. As we approached it, I walked looking at the ground because I didn't want to trip over the tree roots and camping gear that may have been left out for the next morning. I noticed the shadow of a girl to my left, maybe 3 feet behind me. I automatically assumed one of the other girls had heard us leave and was in the same position as me, too scared to walk to the bathroom on her own at night. So I turned around, but there was no one there. When I looked down, the shadow was still there. I remember distinctly thinking it was the shadow of a girl because I could make out long hair and a dress, which I had assumed was a nightgown, but it was a warm night. Looking at the shadow, I noticed something. The one singular source of light on a cloudy night, where you couldn't see the moon or stars, was hitting us from the right. But my shadow and my friend's shadow steamed from our feet towards 10 o'clock, while this shadow seemed to be coming from nowhere. I tried to rationalize this in every way physics would allow, but I was so freaked out that I closed my eyes and speed walked closer to my friend. We didn't say anything to each other the whole walk down. Once we had gotten past the mess tent and onto the path, we both turned our phone torches on to light the path, which was completely dark all the way up to the bathrooms. We could see lights from other campsites dotted around the place, but none were bright or close enough to lighting the path. When we got to the bathrooms, I locked myself in a stall and just sat there. My heart was beating out of my chest. I felt like if I opened the door, someone was going to be standing there, waiting for me. I waited until I heard my friend flush and unlock her stall before I left mine. I couldn't even look in the mirror as I washed my hands because I was afraid I would see something I didn't want to. We walked back to our tent, and I got into my sleeping bag without saying anything. I barely slept that night, trying to figure out what had happened and if I saw a ghost. To this day, if people ask me if I've ever had a paranormal encounter, I think back to that shadow walking behind me. It gives me chills just writing about it now. I recently told this story to one of my friends. We Google searched to see if anyone else had a similar experience or if there was any official lore about the Lady of Larch Hill. I found one story written on Love in Dublin by a guy who calls her the Blue Lady and says that he came face to face with her one day. A thread from around 2005 where a few people recall being told the site was haunted, but I couldn't find any info beyond that. We're always hearing about the Blue Lady, as we called her. I saw the photo in reception with the cracked glass. I distinctly remember them saying the glass was cracked only on the inside layer of the glass. Must have been double layer. I don't know how true that is, but I've never forgotten it. I was sharing the tent with a friend. I had to use the bathroom. As we were walking, we met up with these two girls from another troop, and we all walked. Once me and my friend were finished, we waited outside for the girls. Since we're two 10-year-old boys, we decided to scare them. The plan was to say, "Did you hear that?" Or, "What's that shadow?" Now this was years ago, but we took a weird route back to the campsite and ended up walking through the playground. Anyone who knows Larch Hill remembers that. So as we were walking away, I turned to say what was that and shined my torch. I expected to be nothing there, but that's not what I saw. It looked like a little girl was poking her head out from behind a wall. We all saw her and thought she was another scout, so we walked towards her. As we did, she ducked away. Literally a second later, we rounded the wall, and she was gone. No one was there, but there were clear indentations in the grass. We didn't say anything, but I swear I nearly pissed myself. We just ran. The four of us all ducked into the girls' tent and sat awake terrified all night, literally shaking, but too scared to say a word. We got in big trouble the next day for being in the girls' tent and in another troop's tent, but oh well. I'm really not sure. I know for a fact that all four of us saw the same exact thing, but I'm not a huge believer in ghost stories. It just doesn't make logical sense. But in that same vein, I know what I saw. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.